So I'm going to show you how we water our blueberries that are in the nursery side and how we fertilize them. So as you can see, we've got a gas-powered water pump, and I'm going to dump in some fertilizer into a mixing tank there. And you notice whenever we establish all these plants, we've got drip tubing that goes down through each plant. Now they don't have drip emitters, they just have 1/4-inch holes drilled into the tubing because we water out of this pond, and they'll just clog up if you have too small of emitters. So I'll jump back on here and show you the plants. They are about, I'd say just below my chest, so they're about 40 inches tall or so. These all started as 8-inch little sprigs, probably about 8 to 12, probably about this tall right here. And this is the growth that we've managed to put on. Not all of them have put on amazing growth, but most of them are really getting up there and putting on really good growth. And the foliage, so we've got some really nice big dark green leaves. That's what you want. These are some of the more mature foliage, and they're nice and dark green. And the new sprigs will start out light like this. Nitrogen is mobile in this plant, so eventually they will fill out and get more green at the base, like these here, as they mature. You can see this has got some bug pressure on it. These bites are most likely from, I'd say, a Japanese beetle or a bagworm. If you look around, I'm sure cheap sump pump. This is probably about a $40 sump pump, hooked onto the garden hose adapter, and ran some generator here to power it. And now I'm trickle feeding, as you can see in here, the fertilizer concentration. Some are going at a little higher pace than others, like this one's really dumping it on. So I'm going to close this valve off a little more, and I'm going to break it up into zones where I'm going to close this valve, and I'm just going to let these have a longer cycle. See all down through here, so they're getting that fertilizer in there, and then I'll just cut these off. Finish fertigating the blueberries. If you're an intro grower to blueberries, my biggest advice is to maybe plant them in a pot. They do really well in pots. The only issue you're going to have with growing in a pot is they dry out very quickly. In the summertime when it's hot, you're going to have to water that pot almost every day. Also, they are going to grow out of their pot. These are 2-gallon pots here. I just watered these yesterday, and we just applied fertigation, and they're already getting a little on the dry side. They're just about right. You want to be able to take the soil, hold it in your hand, and squeeze it. If water is dripping out of it, it's too wet. If it crumbles and feels dry, it's too dry. You want that nice in-between consistency. You should be able to feel the soil, and it should be damp but not wet. Make sure your pot has good drainage. That's a big issue you'll have with blueberries, is bad drainage will cause the plant to die. It suffocates the plant because the roots are essentially just sitting in a bowl of water and they can't breathe. And it's not so much air, it's nutrients that they can't absorb. So make sure that you've got them in a really good sized pot that drains really well. Other than that, they're a fairly easy plant to take care of. Just make sure you get a plant that is recommended for your zone that you're growing in. And of course, get an early season and mid-season. I'd stray away from late season plants because the fruit set's going to be so late in the season. It's going to be hot. You're not going to want to mess with it. But if you want blueberries year round, then grab them. Also, we have bees to help pollinate these. Now, these aren't to pollinate these plants. They're actually to pollinate the ones way out there in the field. These blueberries, when they go dormant and they lose all their leaves, you will see the fruit set buds on them. And we will actually trim all of those buds off because I do not want them to fruit in the first couple of years. These plants have grown from about 8 inches to 40 inches by trimming all of the fruit off of them. In contrast, I have other plants that were the same, and they have grown about maybe 12 inches, and they have put on one cane for the whole season so far, whereas all of these plants have put on multiple canes. So I hope that helps you guys, and make sure to like and subscribe and follow our content. Okay, so here's our patch of blueberries after they come out of the nursery down there. When we get them a little bigger, we'll put them out here in the field. They're a little more in the elements here and not as babied, so only the strong will survive. That's why we keep them down there. So this fall, they're going to get planted in these rows. If you notice, we're doing raised mounds. And the benefit of this raised mound is it will allow water to drain out of the soil fairly quickly. Water, when it rains heavily, this flat ground is going to hold water. If you're walking around in it and it's splashing beneath your feet, too much water, and your blueberry plants are not going to do well in that because the roots are not going to be able to absorb the nutrients they need. They're so shallow rooted. So we've got them on raised beds to prevent that problem. The other thing with raised beds is blessing and a curse. They dry out very fast. It's like pots. They're just up here, so they drain. Naturally, water goes down, and there's just a lot of surface area exposed to the sunlight, so you're going to have trouble keeping these damp whenever it is really hot. In the last 30 days, we've only had an inch of rain, and we've been irrigating like crazy, and we've actually lost a few plants because of that. And they'll start out, what they'll do is, you can see one's missing there, and I had to cut this one back, is they'll look perfect, and then literally you'll come out here a day or 2 days later, and bam, they'll flag like this. You actually have green tissue that turns brown and then fully dies like this within a matter of 2 days. So we'll cut this sprig off after the, and hopefully the rest of the plant won't die. They usually do though. You see here we've got another flag sprig, right there. These dukes are very temperamental. The blue crops, I hardly ever have any problems with them doing that. They have a lot higher tolerance to conditions. So mulch is really the key though. Got to have a lot of it. They love the organic matter as the mulch breaks down, and it provides a really good medium for them. As far as getting your plantings ready to go, so this is our native soil with amendment in it. We've added sulfur in it after doing a soil test, and you can actually see those little yellow granules are sulfur. If you can't, take your hand and hand dig a hole for your blueberry plant, and you have to use a shovel because your soil is so heavy to break it loose, you are not ready to plant in that soil. Your plant will not do well. So we've mounded these, and then we've added pine bark and peat moss and tilled it in with the sulfur. And it just creates a super fluffy, light soil. And as you can see, it hasn't rained in a month out here, and it's actually wet. The soil's damp. And so it's holding some nice moisture in it, but it's not. And so that organic matter has a lot of surface area to hold that moisture. So that's just a really good medium. So anyways, and then they'll get irrigation lines ran down them and heavily mulched. You can see we put some sawdust there on one of them to just kind of decompose in. Sawdust over here. We use pine bark is the best thing you can use. We get a lot of sawdust for free because I own a wood shop. And sawdust is actually really great for weed control, but it does steal a lot of nitrogen from the soil. And here we've used pecan shells on the blackberries. And it actually works really well as well. The thing about mulch is you want to try to find a source for good mulch that you can get for next to nothing, because you're going to need a lot of it. This is like probably 15 cubic yards of mulch per row, and that adds up pretty fast. And it also helps with weed management. I mean, we're mulched heavily and we still get little sprigs of weeds. If you let your plant get grown up in weeds, it is detrimental to the plant. It will not do well. And these are actually some pink lemonades that we have mulched in the pine bark. And they're actually doing really, really well. And these don't get watered hardly ever, and they just tolerate it super well because the mulch is almost 12 inches deep here. So, and these are our blackberries, and we're kind of pruning them out right now.